What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and I am about to deliver you some excellent news. If you wanted some good news today, make sure you smash like on this video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, there's a red subscribe button down below. I hope today will be the day you finally click it. I hope I will have earned it. Now, we all know that Twitter has been engaging in some questionable acts. It's at least my opinion that they are biased in the way that they censor particular tweets. We saw this with the New York Post, which I'll talk about in a minute. It's also obvious to me, at least I guess in my opinion, that they have a bias towards one side of the aisle and not the other. Now, this would be totally fine of any normal company. I may still make fun of them, or I may still say, hey, I don't want to buy their products. But when you benefit from Section 230 protections the United States government has given you, then I'm a little more concerned with what you do with those protections. And if you're going to use those protections to act like a publisher and instead of a platform, now I'm concerned. So for those that don't know Section 230, I'm not going to go into the long definition, but just this is probably the 30,000 foot view of it. If companies like Facebook or Twitter were to exist as a publisher, they would be then liable for anything their users upload. This would also be true of YouTube. So if somebody uploaded something horrible, it would open them up to all sorts of things. That's why Section 230 is there, so that they can exist without being personally liable, because they are just a platform. Essentially, we are the public park. What happens inside that park, we don't have anything to do with, which is all fine and dandy and something that in general I support. However, the difference is once you start publishing content, or in their case, selectively removing it, you become a publisher. When you apply bias and you selectively remove content, you are in a way acting as a publisher by omission or by censorship. And just, I know you need a little boost, so I'm going to get right to it. Boom. Twitter's stock has been plummeting. It is down 25% in the last 2 days. It was down 20% on Friday. It's down another 5% today. Absolute destruction with no end in sight. Now, why? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First and foremost, nobody wants to use Twitter anymore. And I understand. Look, I have a Parler account. Let me tell you why I like Parler. I have, 95,000 followers on Twitter. I'd be lucky if I get like 500 interactions with a particular tweet. On Parler, I have 63,000, and I regularly get hundreds of interactions, constantly. More engagement on Parler. Why? Because people that actually follow you actually see your tweets. I actually see, or your parlays as they call them. So people have left Twitter, and it's hurt them. You can see from a financial standpoint at the Motley Fool. So why did it drop 20%? So what's the problem with Twitter? In a word, it's users. Or in 3 words, weak user growth. In the second quarter, with everybody locked down, many Americans housebound, Twitter added 20 million new users, reports the Wall Street Journal. Last quarter, though, analysts thought that might settle down a bit, but still forecast Twitter would add 10 million new users. Instead, Twitter reported just 1 million users, down 90% from forecasts. Now, I think that this probably means they lost a couple million users, and then they added a couple, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think people, over all this censorship that's been happening, all this type of things, people are leaving. And if we look at what they did with the New York Post, for example. Now, if you weren't following the story, I cover it on Midwestly. By the way, there's a link in my description to my politics channel, or the channel where I cover basically everything that's not this. So if you want, election coverage, or you want, coverage of the peaceful gatherings in the streets that are 94% peaceful or whatever, that's where I cover that. But you can see this article on The Verge. In its latest confusing decision, Twitter reinstates the New York Post. It's incredible that this is still happening. And by the way, The Verge is a left-leaning website. So Rupert Murdoch's tabloid, the New York Post, is back on Twitter after Twitter updated its policy and policy changes. The story is going to be confusing, but not as confusing as Twitter's attempts at moderation. To recap, on October 14th, the New York Post published a contested report on a particular laptop. It's not contested. It's only contested because it looks bad for one of the candidates. There's absolutely no real evidence that it isn't real. Twitter then suspended the New York Post account for 6 tweets linked to that story and blocked links to that story, citing that they didn't like where the materials were obtained, as well as a policy about private information. This caused perhaps predictably a massive uproar on October 15th. Twitter's trust and safety lead, Vallagare, I don't know, that Twitter's materials, would change and that the company would no longer remove content unless it directly shared by those who took it against their will. On October 16th, Jack Dorsey tweeted that blocking the URL was wrong, and a Twitter spokesperson told the New York Times that the information that was previously private information had spread so widely that it could no longer be considered private. Therefore, the Post article was no longer violating any type of personal information policy. Well, ultimately, here's what happened. Twitter tried to selectively censor information that made a political candidate that they shill for look bad. Let's be honest, right? They then tried to censor it. Then what happened was the Streisand effect that everybody knew would happen, right? So the Streisand effect kicks in. It doesn't matter. The story still spreads like wildfire. Twitter then gets hauled up to Capitol Hill and raked across the coals by Ted Cruz, and now all of a sudden they change their mind. Of course, the Republican Party called foul on the whole thing and made everyone sit through a tiresome Senate hearing on October 28th. Yes, yeah, I know a pro-censorship outlet like The Verge probably, again, these are outlets, mainstream media that is, that don't ever have to worry about being censored because they are defining the narrative, and that narrative is being enforced by censorious Silicon Valley and places like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube to an extent. There's absolutely something going on weird with YouTube that I can't quite describe yet, but my sub growth has completely stopped. My referral views have completely stopped. Yes, I know a lot of people are looking at the election, but not to this degree. And also, this exact same thing happened to more than a dozen similar channels who all range the political spectrum. So you can't even really say like, oh, it's a politics thing. I don't know what it is. I think it's we want to push mainstream media ahead. We want to run, ads for Biden instead of showing YouTubers the content that they want. They're redirecting people is what I think. And just Friday, the active users only by 1 million. Now, look, there's 187 million users. All right, but wait was I think there was some article that said basically, here you go, this on Search Engine Journal, 10% of Twitter users are creating 80% of the tweets. Now, normally in business, you have an 80-20 rule. It applies all over the map. Do the 20% of the work that gives 80% of the results. 20% of your customers refer 80% of your revenue. All sorts of things like that. And it just works for a lot of things. So you're seeing that, having 187 million quote unquote registered accounts means you really have 18 million users. Most people are lurkers or probably fake accounts or bot accounts or abandoned accounts. And it's long been known that Twitter can't really make very much money using their advertising platform. People don't really want, other than big brands, like direct marketing sucks on Twitter. Like if you're selling a specific product and you're trying to promote a tweet, it's awful. The ROI is terrible. If you're Coca-Cola or you're Honda and you want to just do some branding, sure, but that doesn't have a direct ROI typically. It's adjusted. Sorry, I'm getting into my day job a little bit. You see, most of the content posted by U.S. users on Twitter is from a small number of accounts. The study finds that 80% of all tweets published by people in the U.S. are from 10% of users. By comparison, the median user tweets just twice a month. The study indicates that the 10% most active users are also more likely to be women. Data shows that they follow and or are following significantly more accounts than less active Twitters. Users with a median of 138 tweets a month. It should be no surprise that most active users use Twitter more than once a day. I mean, and you also have U.S. adults who use Twitter are more likely to have a college degree, 42%. By comparison, the overall share of the public that have that level of education is 31%. There's also a difference found in household income. A greater percentage of U.S. Twitter users are reporting a household income above $75,000 compared to the general population, 41% versus 32%. So Twitter is literally used by the elites, by people that have an average salary far above the mean, and they use it fervently. This is the exact, statistics proves that Twitter is populated by a few elites that spend all their time on Twitter. And of course, this is after Twitter unlocks New York Post account after 2-week standoff. So Twitter bends the knee. It's now down 21. It was down to more than 21% on Friday. As of right now, it continues to go down. It's dropping even more, like right before our eyes. It's now down 5.83%. It could finish down another 10%. This is a massive, massive hit for Twitter, and it couldn't happen to a better group of jerks. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to smash like. Remember to click that red subscribe button down below the video. We'll talk to you again real soon.